What happens if you lose, Nick?
Who the hell is Aquaman?
I get Fruity Pebbles, Cocoa Pebbles, I get sausage biscuits. Maybe you guys will see a little footage of that later on because we got some good stuff.
Go with the deuces. There you go, baby.
Welcome to another episode of Cage Side with Christopher James. Although today we're going to change the name to Ringside with Christopher James in honor of my one and only guest this week, Olympic gold medalist Howard Davis Jr. Howard won the gold medal in 1976, and he actually wasn't supposed to be on the Olympic team, but he beat out Aaron Pryor in the trials, went to the Olympics, won the gold medal. Now, the reason I'm talking about Howard is because he's moved on to being an MMA promoter. He runs Fight Time Promotions in Fort Lauderdale. We went to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony this past week and saw Howard give his speech, and I had a nice sit down with him. So here he is right now, the one and only Howard Davis Jr.
And he's most deserving. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2013, trainer, promoter, and Olympic champion, Howard Davis Jr.
Thank you so much. Let's give a hand to Bob Alexander. He's doing a magnificent job. Thanks, Bob. I'm honored to be up here, especially with such great people. Everybody have a story up here, and you got to listen to some of these stories that these fighters and judges have to say. It's unbelievable, and I'm glad and honored to be a part of the 2013 Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. Thank you very much. Before I get started, I have some bookmarks here that I want to make sure I'm thanking the right people. You know, there's a saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. And sometimes, when you think of that, there are people behind the scenes that are working tirelessly to put on a show like this. And you see all the lights and you see all the glitter here. But there's people behind the scenes that make this happen. So I want to give thanks to the people that, make this show happen. And they're doing a, fantastic job. And this is not easy to do, especially me being a promoter, and Henry can probably contest for that. This is not an easy job to do, so I want to thank some of these people. I want to thank the president, Walter Butch Flansburgh. A lot of you probably don't know his first name. I asked him last night, how'd you get the name Butch from Walter? Vice President Steve Canton, their medical advisor, Dr. Alan Fields, public relations, Rick Falstead, and last but not least, his wife, from what I heard, does all the work, Kathy Flansburgh. Thank you so much for putting such a great ceremony today. I have two families. My extended family is my boxing family, but I also want to thank my DNA family who came down, most who came down from New York to be a part of the ceremony. I want to thank my daughter, Tamika. Could you please stand up? Where are you? I want to thank my brother and his wife, Kenny and Lorna Davis. Please stand up. I want to thank my son, Dyer Davis, and his girlfriend. And congratulations, Dyer, on buying his first house. Could you stand up? My son is fighting next month, so we want to wish him luck. I want to thank my sister Kathy for coming. Stand up, Kathy. My 3-year-old daughter, Samia, could you stand up, sweetheart? And last but not least, my right hand, my best friend, my wife, Carla Davis. Stand up, sweetheart. Today, they were speaking about my mother 3 days before I had my first fight in the Olympics. That was a very difficult thing for me to do. And, oh, I forgot. Sam Cohen. How did I forget about you? Sam, God, I'm sorry, Sam. Sam and his lovely wife, I'm very sorry. Could you please stand up?
Stand up, Sam. Stand up. Stand up, Sam.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, Sam, but how can I forget about you? Sam shows up to American Top Team once in a while just to stop in and say hello to me. And he comes to some of my MMA events, so I'm glad and honored to be a part of, to be your friend. Yeah, thank you so much. As I was talking, it was a very difficult situation I was put in, and I won the Olympics for my mother. Somebody could have probably came in the ring with a gun and shot me, and I still would have been fighting. That's how strong I felt about winning for my mother. My mother's last words to me was, and she took a finger like this just before I got on the plane, was good luck. She had a bright smile on her face. Good luck, home, you better bring that gold home. And I promised her that I would do it. I dedicated the Olympics to my mother, but today I'm dedicating this ring and the induction to my father. My father passed away 2 years ago from complications from diabetes. So I'm dedicating this day to my father. And I just want to tell you a little bit about my father. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be boxing. I never would have boxed. Because my first love at that time was being a musician. And I was in a band, and my brother Kenny, who was James Brown Jr. in that band, with a big afro, I had to mention it, sorry. A big afro, big scarf around his neck like James Brown. He thought he was James Brown, believe it or not. Being 7, 8 years old, and he took the reins, and it was the singer of the band, and we happened to do a song with James Brown one time. We were at this club singing, and we didn't know James Brown was there. We was doing a James Brown song, me playing the drums at the time, and my brother Kenny, the singer. He just showed up, and he asked to do a song with us. And, he do his little dancing move, and my brother Kenny would mimic the dancing moves that he did. It was never caught on film. Nobody took a picture of it, and that's something that I cherish with my brother especially. But I was a musician. I played 4 instruments. I did that before I boxed, and I thought that's the road I was leading down to. But my father one day asked me did I want to go to the movies with him. I said sure. For some strange reason, I didn't ask him what movie we were going to see, and for some strange reason, he didn't tell me. I was just happy to be with Pops. But this movie was about Muhammad Ali. It came out in the year 1971. I was 15 years old. And the name of the movie was AKA Cassius Clay. And it was also known as Cassius Clay. But we all know him today as Muhammad Ali. And this was a documentary about his life. And this is just before he was making his comeback. And it was only in a few selected theaters around the country, and it just happened to be in my hometown of Glen Cove, Long Island. So I went to see the movie, and man, I was like, I could not believe what this man was doing and how he was talking. Those were the times where, black people didn't talk like that, and I just couldn't believe it. I was just stunned. So after leaving the theater, we're driving home, and I said to my father, I said, I want to box. My father, keeping his eye on the road, kind of looked at me and said, what? I said, I want to box. And he laid the ground rules for me. He says, go to bed early, eat right, and listen to what I'm saying. So the very next morning, we had a lot of hills in Glen Cove, and I never ran before. I got up at 4:30 in the morning, and I ran up and down the hills of Glen Cove, Long Island, and I did it every single day for 5 years. And just by those few words of my father asking me to go to movies with him, that was the impetus for me to start boxing. Now, my father was a master trainer, motivational, and a father to a lot of the kids in my neighborhood. I grew up in the projects. And back in the late 60s, early 70s, there was this drug called smack, commonly known as heroin. And my building was the cleanest building. Nobody sold drugs in that building. Nobody took drugs in that building because of my father. Everybody had the utmost respect for my father. And I can tell you one story, which was told to me by my brother Kenny. And I heard about it through the neighborhood. My father was leaving the apartment, and a drug dealer asked him where he could get smack. So my father made like he couldn't hear him. He said, would you ask me? The guy got close. He said, where can I get smack? Well, my father showed him where the door was by picking him up and throwing him down a flight of stairs. So the guy took off. The next day, my uncle came to the house, who was a police officer in Glen Cove, and asked my father, did he throw a guy down the stairs? So my father said, yes, I did. He said, well, that guy was a narcotics cop. That's who my father was. And my father had 7 Gold Glove champions, including me, myself, and my brother Kenny. And my brother Kenny turned pro, had 5 fights, undefeated, and then I think he thought this wasn't for him, so he became a police officer, which is safer, I think. That's a decision he made. But today I would like to dedicate this to my father. God bless him and my mother. They're in heaven now, hopefully smiling on me. Thank you very, very much, and God bless everybody.
How you doing? I'm Christopher James, and normally at this part of the show, I say welcome to Cage Side with Christopher James. But today, I'm sitting here with Howard Davis Jr. So in honor of him being inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2013, today we're going to call this Ringside with Christopher James. And here he is right now, Florida Hall of Fame boxing inductee, 1976 Olympic Gold Medalist, Howard Davis Jr. Howard, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris.
So, I've been hanging out with you for the last few days. I was down in Fort Lauderdale with you for your promotion, Fight Time Promotions MMA show. Great, by the way. Good night of fights. Some good action, and it couldn't have worked out better for you, by the way, with Julian Lane now matching up against Wagner Roca for the title. That's going to be a money match right there. So, I had shared with you that I watched you win that gold medal in 1976, sat on the couch with my dad. How might that make you feel when you're meeting people today and they're all talking about that special moment? And they remember you from, and that was a long time ago. How does that make you feel that that moment is ingrained, like on my brain and others?
What it means to me is not lost in time. It's a timeless situation that I was in. And 1976 was the bicentennial year, and it was just a magical moment for me and my family and friends. So there's something I'll never forget, and believe it or not, it seemed like it was yesterday. You don't realize that almost 37 years has passed by, but whenever anybody would look up the 1976 Olympics for boxing, my name will always be etched in stone. So I'm always honored, and I feel very privileged to be a part of that team.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. It feels like yesterday, even for somebody like me, who obviously I wasn't there, but I saw it. When I saw you the other day, that moment always comes back in my head. Every time I see you on TV winning the fight, big afro, little mustache action. I told him he should bring back the afro, so you guys can like vote on the website. We're going to take a poll and see if Howard should bring back the afro. But you know, and you talked about that moment. Your mom passed away before the Olympics, and you know that was something I actually didn't know until today, when you gave your speech. What was running through your head when you walked into the ring that day for your fight to win that gold medal, and how much were you thinking about your mom?
I felt my mother's presence. I don't want to get esoteric here, but I always felt my mother's presence. And that's what kept me strong and motivated every single day. I remember the day I found out that she had passed away. Both coaches said to me, "You don't have to work out today if you don't want to." I said, "No, I'm here for a reason. Matter of fact, I'm going to work out today." So I went to the gym, and I guess my teammates were hearing how I was hitting the bag, because it was a little different than normal. And everybody made a circle around me and was screaming and "Do it for your mother." And I can remember, it's etched in my mind right now, I can remember hitting that bag like I've never hit that bag before. The sound I was making on that bag, and I'm not what you call a big puncher, but I felt like I was hitting that bag like I was hitting it like I was fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. And I was crying, and tears were coming down my eyes. And there was a certain spirit that I had at that particular time that I probably couldn't evoke that spirit again, ever again. But I felt at that particular time that no way in the world I was going to lose. I don't know if you ever had those kind of epiphanies, but I felt that the only way I could lose is somebody had to actually come in that ring and shoot me. And I still would have fought on. That's the way I felt.
I believe it. And you feel like you said you felt that spirit, something that was driving you. You feel that your mom was in your fist that afternoon with you?
Yes.
She's a hard hitter?
Well, I tell you, I'm not a big puncher. I had five fights in the Olympic Games, and 2 of those were knockouts. So,
which was never really...
No, it was never my forte, knocking somebody out. I mean, if it came, it came. But it was never my forte. I always looked at myself as a mad scientist, you know, mixing the ingredients and putting the ingredients together in the ring with me, you know. I always thought I was, it may seem a little bit above myself, but this is the way I felt at the time. I was probably one of the most intelligent fighters there was, and I just felt that this was a game of chess for me, and I'm always going to outsmart you, and I was always going to be one step ahead of you, and that's the way I felt. And with my mother's presence in mind of her death, I just felt that I couldn't be beat. That spirit at that particular time was ingrained in me.
And that's what got you here, you know. So,
yes.
So then you moved on to your professional career.
Yeah.
Had a great professional career with the afro. I'm telling you, I love the afro. I'm going to bring that up all day.
Oh God, I might bring it back then.
You might have to bring it back. At least get a wig and get a video of it. At least one.
Today it would be called the TWA.
TWA?
Teeny weeny afro.
Teeny weeny afro.
Yeah.
Not that link from the Mod
No,
Squad
it wouldn't
version.
grow like it would take too long. It would take too long to grow.
So you moved into the professional ranks, you know, and how did that make you feel? You went from the Olympics, you were a gold medalist, and you were doing, you know, it wasn't for money, it was for glory, it was to represent your country. You switched over to the pros, you had a good career, you made some money, and you won. You know, was that always the game plan after the Olympics? Because I remember you had mentioned music. Did you ever want to go back to do music, or was boxing in at that point?
Believe it or not, Chris, music is and was my first love. I did boxing because I guess I was known for it. But music has always been my first love. I played four musical instruments: bass, drums, guitar, and keyboards. self-taught. And I have a musical studio in my house that I play every single day. And I'm really thinking about forming a band, but that's always been my first love. But you know, I love boxing, and unfortunately I never got a chance to win the championship, the professional championship. But I still had a great career, and I wouldn't trade it in for the world. You know, it was just magical moments. There's been some difficult times, especially when you lose a fight. Especially when you lose a fight you thought you won. There's been a couple of those. But overall, I really enjoyed my career. I enjoyed my life in boxing, and it's brought me to thus. I wouldn't be here speaking to you right now if it wasn't for boxing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, and tie something, like I said earlier, my father is probably sitting in heaven right now looking down at me and going, son of a gun, my son is hanging out with Howard Davis Jr., gold medalist, because my dad was a huge fan of yours. Now, with the professional career, you said, you know, you didn't win a championship, which to me doesn't mean anything. But if you had your choice between that gold medal and a world title, which one would you get? Which one would you choose?
Pardon me, the gold medal. I was reading something. I don't know how I get, you know, because sometimes you look online and one thing will pop up, something else pop up on the screen, and something popped up about the Olympics. And I started reading it, and it said, for somebody to win the Olympics, it's like 1 million to 1 that somebody can win the Olympics. So, yeah, I'm always reminded about that special time that I put the gold medal around my neck. So, I would never trade that in for the world. Especially, you know, it was a significant moment for me because I won that for my mother.
So, and now you're in the Hall of Fame, and I was listening to your speech, and you dedicated the ring. Show that ring up. That's the Hall of Fame ring that he's got. And I saw you when you were giving your speech. I was listening to you, and you said you dedicated that to your father, who passed away a couple of years ago. And for the first time since I've been hanging out with you for the last few days, I saw a little more emotion come out of you. You feel your dad in you today a little more than you normally do?
I feel my dad every single day. You know, you get certain parts of genetics from your mother, which could be emotion, could be athletic. You get different parts of your father, which could bear on intelligence, part emotion. I definitely got both from my mother and father equally. I remember my mother telling me one time, this is funny coming from my mother, because she did something so uncanny and so not her. One day she's telling me, she says, you should work on your speed by catching flies. I'm like, what did my mother know about speed and boxing? About 2 days later, I was called John John in my family. Everybody called my nickname is John John from my family and friends. She says, John John, look. She opened up her hand and a fly flew out. I said, Mom, you caught a fly? She said, yes. Work on your speed. So it took me a couple of days to catch a fly. So I finally caught one and I showed my mother a fly flew out of my hand. So those things, my father wasn't considered my father used to box also. He wasn't considered a fast boxer. You know, he was more like a slugger. So I think the speed came from my mother. But the musical part of me definitely come from my father's side. My grandmother used to sing and play the piano. I don't know if anybody on my mother's side is musical, but the musical part definitely came from my father's side.
Awesome. Now, you know, the fly thing is funny because, you know, 20 years later, 30 years later, Mr. Miyagi on the Karate Kid told them to catch with the fly with the chopsticks, so maybe that's where they got that from your mom.
I don't know. I don't know my mother.
They were stealing flies from your mom.
Yeah.
Because your
Could
mom
have been.
Could have been. Now, you're in the Hall of Fame now, here in Florida. What does that mean to you, being a Florida resident now? You're here, you have your MMA promotion here, and you're recognized here in the state of Florida. All these people were here. You know, I watched during all the inductions today, and when they said your name, there's something special about that Olympic gold medalist, and I thought everybody swell up with pride watching you go up there and remembering those moments. You know, so how does that affect you here in Florida now? You know, this is your home now.
Well, you know, before I came down here, I was a computer technician back in New Jersey. I lived in Jersey. I'm originally from New York, but I lived in Jersey for 25 years before I came down here. And in between jobs, being a computer technician, you get laid off for a couple of days when you finish your job. And then they call you up and say, hey, we got another job for you. Could you ride over here? So there's different destinations in the state of New Jersey that I was working. So in between getting laid off, I get a call to come to Florida to be the boxing coach and boxing director of American Top Team. Once I came down here, my life changed. I've been down here for 10 years, and I'm telling you, my life changed in a big way. I never thought in a million years, let alone being a promoter, but an MMA promoter, which is, of course, is a martial sport, and boxing is a martial sport, but to be affiliated with such good people from the MMA world, it's quite unique and different for me. But now, Florida's my home. I love it down here. I wouldn't trade it. I do have a special place for New York because I got friends and family that still are there. But Florida, the people down here are great. And the special bond that I have with the people down here is amazing. So I met my wife here. I remarried. I have a 3-year-old daughter. So I'm very happy. Very happy.
You said something there. Boxing is one of the martial arts, and there's a lot of guys coming from the boxing, especially in your generation, who absolutely 100% give no respect and they don't pay any mind to mixed martial arts. I was having a conversation with some of the other boxers here last night, and they were all just like, no. I said, well, so I brought up to them. I said, well, you know Howard Davis? They're like, of course I do. I said, he runs an MMA promotion, and I said, don't you believe that if somebody like Howard, who's been there and seen the glory days of boxing and comes through it and sees what's the glory in mixed martial arts too, don't you think you should give it a try? One guy said, I would, just because you're doing it. And another guy said, nope, I'm just an old boxing guy, MMA, blah. You got a unique take from coming from both worlds.
Yes.
So how do you feel about the guy that's going to give it a shot because and he respects you, and then the other guy who doesn't want to have anything to do with it?
Well,
how does that make you feel?
I think the culture is different from boxing, from MMA. And I think the boxer that speaks of MMA in that negative light only looks at it from a boxer's mindset. MMA, there's so many different genres of the sport that I think when the boxer looks at the striking part of it, these guys can't fight. That's all they look at. And believe it or not, when I first came into MMA, I was looking at the striking part too. I said, God, these guys are horrible, And of course, it's grown exponentially where now a lot of them, it's still got some growth, but a lot of MMA fighters are getting better at striking. So I think the boxer is just looking at it from the striking point of view. And I've grown to mature on this sport. Before, if they went to the ground, oh my God, I wish I'd stand up. Only reason why I said that because I had no understanding of what the groundwork, what they were doing on the ground.
And grappling
exactly.
And all that.
So I have a greater appreciation now for the sport because I do understand when they do go to the ground what they're doing, what the transitions are to get to one point A to point B, to either get somebody into an arm bar, leg lock, or the different genres.
Get a choke.
Exactly.
It's exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting, and I have a greater appreciation for it now than I did 10 years ago.
And what made you decide? I know Carla, your wife, is a big part of the reason you guys got into MMA, because she told me that she went and saw a fight with you, and from that moment forward, she was hooked. So how long did it take her to convince you to jump on board, or were you right there with her?
Well, I took my wife to an MMA fight about 3 years ago, and she's never seen MMA. She's heard about it, but she's never seen MMA. And she just right at the fight we were watching, she says, "Man, we can do this." And I said, "Do what?" "We can put on a show." I said, "What show are you talking about?" And I had no concept of what she was thinking at the time. we can do MMA fights. I saw you nuts, and I'm looking at it. No, we can, you know. Her background is production, so she was looking at the production part of it, and she just thought, man, we can do this. And she had that epiphany back in 2010. At that particular time, I had to go train Chuck Liddell. And when I came back from training Chuck Liddell, she had all the paperwork done, the name of the company, et cetera. And I couldn't believe what she was doing, and at that particular time, so I had to jump on board. She already started it, so what was I going to do?
You left town, you came back, you're an MMA promoter.
Yes.
Thanks, Carl.
Yeah. Thanks, sweetheart.
So your career now with the MMA, you've been doing it since 2010. You just had your 15th show, which I attended, and it was the first time I was there. Thank you for having me there, by the way.
Pleasure.
I had a great time. Your staff and everybody treated me very well. The fans there in Fort Lauderdale at the War Memorial Auditorium, it seemed like every fan that was in that building that night knew Fight Time. It wasn't just they were showing up just to see any old fights. They knew Fight Time. They knew what you brought to the table. How does that make you feel now that you're growing like that? And you know, from what I understand, you have some kind of stuff going on maybe with HBO coming up in the future. You know, and like I said, you had a great main event. You had a great night of fights. So the success you're achieving in MMA now, where are you at mentally and spiritually with that?
Chris, if I told you 3 years ago I was going to be an MMA promoter, I didn't believe it myself. And now when I step into the cage, and one of the mantras that I say is, remember, I talk to the crowd, remember it's fight time. I've done it 15 times because we had 15 shows. This is unbelievable. MMA has grown and growing at an unbelievable rate. And for me, especially coming from boxing, to be in this great sport of MMA, it's an amazing journey for me. I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy seeing the fighters win. Sometimes it's not a joyous occasion when you got a good friend that's a fighter that loses. But overall, this has been an amazing journey for me in this wonderful field of MMA. Hopefully, you know, boxing is still my first love. Hopefully in the near future we're going to do boxing, but right now it's MMA.
All right, and what can we expect to see coming up in the future from Fight Time?
Well, we got our next show, August 23rd, Fight Time 16, and we're putting together a great card right now. And you just mentioned Wagner Rocha, who is our lightweight champion, might be defending his title against Mr. Lang, who on the Ultimate Fighter Show 16 was crying and got real emotional on the show.
Had the ultimate meltdown on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that.
Now you said might be fighting for the title. You announced it at the show that.
Well, you never know. I should have preset that and said could be. You know, MMA fighters, they get hurt
Anything
sometimes.
can happen, right?
Anything can happen. But he's challenging Wagner Rocha for the title.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, listen, I know your family's waiting for you over here. They all flew in from New York, Long Island. I'm a Long Island guy. You're a Long Island guy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm from
Long Island?
Brentwood. I grew up
Okay.
in Long Island, Brentwood, South Shore area, and all that good stuff. But I just want to say it's been an honor to spend these last few days with you and, you know, sit and break bread with you and your family last night at dinner. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Again, Dad, I'm hanging out with Howard Davis. So, haha. But thank you for taking the time. It's an honor. I'm proud of you, and it's great to see that you're in the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame and that you're getting recognized for all you did for the sport and for your country. So
Chris,
that's the man, Howard Davis Jr. right there.
thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you having me on your show.
So for Howard Davis Jr., I am Christopher James, and like I said, you're ringside.
And there you have it, Howard Davis Jr., the man, the myth, the legend, gold medalist, and MMA promoter. Hope you enjoyed everything you got to learn about him today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Cage Side with Christopher James.